So Maize. It's not a bad game, but I also don't think it's a very good game. Maize is a walking simulator for the most part, with a little bit of a venture game thrown in there for good measure. Maize was developed and published by Finish Line Games, a studio that I haven't heard much of before playing Maize. From a quick search, it seems that the only other title that they worked on as a studio is Cell Damage HD on the PlayStation consoles, which appears to be a remake of the original Xbox game. Metacritic has this game sitting at a 58%. Maize is being sold on Steam for $20 and is sitting at a very positive review with 206 user reviews at the time of this recording. The puzzles in Maize, if you could really call them that, are basic at best, and for the most part, the game literally tells you where to go when you pick up an item and examine it. While it doesn't directly state, go here and use it on this, what it will say is, this screwdriver looks pretty good at removing loose panels, talking about some interactable panel that you saw in a wall a few rooms back. The majority of the game is like this, with very few spots having me actually wonder what to do. This can be seen either as a good thing or a bad thing depending on your point of view. On one hand, that puts this game in more in line with the walking simulators that you are here for the visuals and the story mostly. On the other hand, this makes the gameplay far less enjoyable in my opinion. I would have a different stance on this if I found the story and active exploring more enjoyable in the game. To be fair, this is one of my first experiences with the walking simulator genre, and my opinions may change as I play and review more of those, such as the Edith Finch game and Gone Home. Those are two of the very high examples of Vanishing. Ethan Carter was one of the first. I haven't played any of those games, but I do plan to go back and check those out soon, and then I can come back and kind of give a second thought on this game to kind of see how they compare to those. The story of Maize is at the outset almost interesting, but I feel it loses steam quickly in the way that it's presented. You, the nameless character, explore an abandoned farm and eventually an underground research facility that was the home of experiments on corn, resulting in them becoming sentient. Yes, that's right, corn. The vegetable. The farmed vegetable. The story starts off being interesting, but quickly fell off for me. The cast of characters and gameplay was not enough to keep me interested in what happened. Much of the story is delivered through post-it notes you find stuck to many parts of the facility you explore, with dialogue between the founders of the facility taking place on these notes. It appears that the co-founders could not stand each other so much that they took to only indirectly talking to each other through these notes. At first, this was quite funny and fun to read, but quickly it overstayed its welcome, and when it appeared all over the facility in large quantities, I was rather through with it. The writing was also a source point for me here, with one of the founders always calling the other names, not so unlike Vladdy does, who we'll get to in a little bit later. If there's a spot the story fell short for me, it's almost certainly in the writing. Voice acting didn't fare much better either. The quality, while not awful, wasn't great, and there were a few voice characters for the first half of the game, with slightly more appearing in the second half, taking on the form of walking sentient corn. The writing here was not any better. If there's anything to say about the style of writing in this game, it's that it's consistent. Consistent in the way that it did not resonate with me in any way really. That being said, it seems that some did enjoy the characters. It felt as though it was geared towards a younger and more haha so random style of comedy that I don't particularly enjoy in the first place. The only antagonist I could really find in the game is a scientist Corn who seems to have noticed your presence and made it his life's goal to stop you. Visuals is probably the game's biggest strength, as it is made with the Unreal 4 engine and looks great with good lighting effects. Although it looks great, I'm not convinced that it's very well optimized, as I frequently get drops into the 50 FPS range on 1080p with an AMD Fury card. I can run The Witcher 3 at 1440p high settings with a higher frame rate than that, so I'm certain it does not look better than The Witcher 3. With that being said, the lighting effects are nice and the game generally looks pretty good. I will say that I think the outdoor farm sections look far better than the underground facility parts did. Close-ups on objects in the game can show some less than perfect textures, but at a distance, and especially the background scenes, outdoors, they look great. Other gripes to the visuals is that outdoor you're very limited in sight and where you can walk because of the fields of corn as far as the eye can see. Most times taller than you are, so you can't see past them. This is done for actual gameplay reasons, as they hide other parts of the farm past these, but it also serves as a clever way to render less on the screen at one time. So while it looks good outdoors, you at times really can't see that much. Something to add to the visual department is that this game generally does a decent job of highlighting objects for you to pick up, but there are a few spots where it's not super clear what you need, and I found myself walking around looking at every nook and cranny to find new objects that I needed to progress. In many ways, it felt like an old adventure game at some points. The visuals are definitely not bad for a game that only cost $20. So besides the gameplay being lacking, the main sticking point that I have with this game is the writing. I think it's honestly just not that good in more than ways than I just said. The game frequently tells you where to go outright with pop-ups on the screen. Your character is voiceless and all dialogue is through the sentient corn, or Vladdy, the Russian talking bear that you create about halfway through the game. He is especially awful, and I feel he significantly reduced my enjoyment of the game when he came about. His dialogue is all in a bad Russian accent, and he consistently complains about how stupid you are, or how stupid the place is, or humans are, but especially you. He really thinks you're stupid. It's hard to find a sentence where he doesn't call you stupid. Other voice characters are the Corn. I saw about 3 distinct characters. One is the Queen, who, while slightly less abrasive, was only talked to for a few minutes, a sentient Corn who is out to get you, the scientist one, and then these 3 Corn that seem to not even notice you when you're there most of the time. None of the writing for these characters stood out at all. I don't even think they were named. A large portion of the writing comes in the folio, which is basically just collectibles in the world that you find. These appear exactly as items needed for puzzles, but instead get added to your folio with a little pop-up telling you that they have been. The writing here that I did not find much better, the game again hinting how dumb your character is, must be for collecting things like rocks and such that you just pick up because the game highlights them for you to do so. The overall tone is very degrading in a way that I didn't find very funny, partially due to the overbearing nature of it. Just every time you pick up an item, there is usually some kind of snide comment about, well, why would you grab that? You don't need a rock, and then you collect like 5 of them throughout the course of the game. In the end, I did not end up finishing Maize. I made it about 3/4 of the way through the game before I called it quits. I found the story vaguely interesting, but not enough to make me want to keep going with the simple gameplay, lots of backtracking, and uninteresting and sometimes abrasive writing. It feels as though it's aimed at younger kids or teenagers with a consistent use of insults hurled in every piece of writing in the game. Every piece of writing that comes up on the screen, which you pick up that is spoken, is almost always filled with a condescending tone that I just don't find funny at all. I made it to about chapter 7 or 9 and decided that I had seen enough, and that I could better spend my time with other games. According to Steam, I spent about 3 hours in the game, which seems to line up with the concession that the game is about 3 to 4 hours long. As I spent more time in the game, I found myself just running and trying to get to the end more and more until I just stopped and said, I'm really not enjoying myself anymore. And which, if there's anything I've learned that I've been playing all these past few years, it's that there's no reason to play a game that you're not enjoying anymore. And so I won't be finishing Maize. I have many other games that I'd love to get into. I don't think I'd be able to recommend Maize at its base price of $20, but if you enjoy walking simulators, and the story and comedy sound appealing to you, which they might be, it is a personal preference in that case, then maybe pick it up on a sale. There are certainly worse games to spend your money on.
So boy, Vladdy know what to do. Just hit stupid thing until... What a stupid place this is.